morning and welcome to Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. Today we have a very interesting show regarding the 2020 census. We've all been hearing a lot about it. We know that people are moving about the Virgin Islands throughout the territory, asking people various pieces of information about their age, what their job is, and so forth, and taking account of them having or being living here in the Virgin Islands. And so today we wanted to bring you more information about the Census 2020. And so we have two important guests with us. And firstly, I'm Troy Schuster. I'm the director of AARP in the Virgin Islands. And we have with us Mr. Cecil Coker, the assistant manager for field operations, and Dr. Tomas Encarnacion, the U.S. Census advisor for the St. Croix district. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Encarnacion, can you tell us a little bit of what you do here on St. Croix with regard to Census 2020? It seems we have a technical difficulty, Dr. Encarnacion. We're not hearing you. So, Mr. Coker, if you'll start while we...
Yeah, can you...
Pardon?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, Dr. Encarnacion. So tell us
what
you do.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, perfect. We hear you.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am the senior staff member here on site of the Census Bureau. I am commissioned to provide the technical expertise and to oversee the 2020 census of the Virgin Islands data collection operation. I work very closely with the 2020 census team here to ensure a high quality, timely, and cost-effective operation. I am also the responsible for monitoring the University of the Virgin Islands performance of the activities that are outlined in the contract between the Census Bureau and the government of the Virgin Islands. We do that to ensure that all contract requirements are completed on time, in scope, and within budget. But my most important piece here is to serve as a technical assistant for or technical expert of the 2020 census here.
Okay, and we see in your title, it says for the St. Croix district. So are you just focusing on St. Croix, or are you focusing on the whole territory?
No, there are two of us here. My colleagues is Daniel Doyle, who is responsible for overseeing the data collection operation in the St. Thomas, St. John district. And I am here responsible for the St. Croix district. So the two of us work in sync. There are two offices, one on St. Thomas and another here on St. Croix, but we work as a unit, as a single unit, to oversee the operation in the entire territory.
Excellent, thank you. And Mr. Coker, tell us what you do as the assistant manager for field operations here in St. Croix.
Well, good morning to all again, and thank you for having us here on your show. I am the assistant manager for field operations, and I'm responsible for overseeing the field data collection operation here in St. Croix. That includes hiring, training the staff, and monitoring the data collection process. Basically, that's what we do. We collect the information. We have people out there in the field going from house to house, collecting that information on the various forms. And I oversee that operation.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Encarnacion, can you share with us what is Census 2020? I'm sure that there are people living in the Virgin Islands who may have immigrated here, what have you, who don't know what census is. And also, why is it important for families and individuals to be counted in the Census 2020?
Sure, that's a very important question. Thank you. The decennial census is the once in a decade population and housing count of all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands. The U.S. military conducted the first census of the Virgin Islands back in 1917. And since then, we have been conducting a census of the Virgin Islands every 10 years, except for the 1940 census, when it had to be canceled due to the World War II efforts. So every 10 years, we are required by law to count every person that is eligible to be counted in the United States, in the entire United States, including this territory. It is required by under the Constitution of the U.S. And it is important for everyone to participate. It is important for us to be counted, for all of us to be counted, regardless of our immigration status. We do not ask questions of citizenship, for instance. We do not need to ask that question. We count every person living in the U.S. Virgin Islands, regardless of where they live or state, so long as they are eligible to be counted. The census data are used by government agencies, that are used by data users, that are used by private institutions, that are used by AARP to find out what the characteristics of the population here in the Virgin Islands are. The educational attainment, the income, mobility questions are asked during the 2020 census. That are very important questions to ask of the population that you serve, because by getting or collecting that data, you are able to then make more informed decisions about your constituents and the people that you work with.
And going along with that, we've been hearing, and please explain the validity of this or confirm it, when it comes to this census, then the federal government uses some of that data to determine how much federal funding each state or territory receives. Is that so?
Sure. Yeah, the distribution of more than 675 million or billion, my apologies, more than 675 billion of federal funds, grants and support to states and territories, funding a wide range of policies are based on census data. For instance, here, the Virgin Islanders use the census data to support community initiatives involving legislations, quality of life, and consumer advocacy, for instance, the works that you guys do at AARP. The U.S. Virgin Islands uses government data to fund a wide range of public policies, such as healthcare, social services, community development, job trainings, environmental protection. Businesses use the census data to decide where to start businesses. In real estate, for instance, real estate developers use Census Bureau data to build homes and revitalize neighborhoods. Each one of us is a census, is a census data user. Each one of us somehow, sometimes when you go out and Google and you try to find out what is the population of St. Croix, that comes from the 2020 census. When you try to Google what is the educational attainment of the St. Croix population, that comes from the 2020 census. So each one of us is a data user. The data that we collect is very, very important to make informed decisions here.
Excellent. And so, Mr. Coker, regarding this census and people or census takers moving from household to household, who should be counted in the various households here in the Virgin Islands?
Well, every eligible member of the household at the time of the interview should be counted, including babies. They move from home to home, and what we are trying to do is to count everyone where they live. And so we are hoping that we can get a real accurate count, because from the count, not only of the people, we also count the housing units that we do have and the characteristics of the units. They also help informing the statistics that we're going to use, or the government per se, or any entity that needs them for whatever purpose. These statistics would be formulated, and those would be used for the various reasons, like government, as you heard. There's about a $675 billion that various states and other countries of the United States would receive in some form or fashion. So we want to be able to count everyone where they are. And so we're looking forward to cooperation from the general public or residents so that we can complete this task successfully.
Thank you. And I recently was interviewed and they asked me a lot of questions. I don't remember having completed a census in a while. Shame to say, I guess in the past census, I was skipped over for some reason. But I was surprised by the great number of questions I was asked. So, Dr. Encarnacion, can you tell us more about that? What kinds of questions will be asked? What kinds of questions should people be prepared to answer in the census?
Sure. So they should be prepared to answer some operational questions, such as, for instance, age, gender, race and ethnicity, relationships, and tenure on the household. They should be prepared to answer questions about ancestry, disability, as one of the questions that perhaps you guys at AARP are interested in knowing. Fertility. Another question is about grandparents, caregivers. Those are questions that we ask. Language spoken at homes, for instance, those are another questions. Marital status and marital history. We ask those questions as well. We ask questions that are of economic in nature, like commuting to work, for instance, or health insurance, income, industry and occupations that you work on, labor force status. Those are questions that we ask. We ask questions about housing subjects, such as whether or not you have computer at home or you have access to the internet. What is the value of your home, or whether you own or rent. We ask questions about plumbing facilities and telephone services. And we also may ask you questions about the monthly cost of you keeping up your homes, the monthly cost of rent, or the monthly cost of your mortgage. Now, one thing that we want to emphasize is that all the questions that we ask, by law, we are required to keep all the information confidential. And we use your responses only to produce statistics. We cannot publicly release your responses to in any way that could identify you or your household. We will never share your information with immigration enforcement agencies such as ICE or law enforcement agencies such as the FBI or the police, or allow your data to be used to determine your eligibility for any government benefits. We want to emphasize that the works that we are doing, it is required by law, but that same law also requires us to keep your information confidential. The census is secure. We take strong precautions to keep your responses safe from hacking and other cyber threats. The census affects your voice in government, how much funding, as I mentioned earlier, your community receives, and how your community plans for the future. So all these questions that we ask are very, very important to you as a data user, and we ensure that that data is kept confidential, and the data that we collect, as I mentioned earlier, can never be used against you. It is only for statistical purposes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, especially the confidentiality part, because the questions are rather detailed. I was surprised when I went through the process, and a couple of times I thought, wow, I hope this information isn't going out in any kind of identifiable manner. So I'm glad to know that it's very confidential, especially for those who may not be registered or living legally here in the Virgin Islands. It's important for them to be counted, but of course, they don't want the authorities coming looking for them to deport them. So I'm glad that you emphasize that it's all very confidential, and even for those who may be here unregistered or illegally, that they will not end up having any complications or problems by answering honestly. I noticed that you mentioned that you gather information on caregivers. That's very important for us at AARP, as you know, as you rightfully mentioned, Dr. Encarnacion. At AARP, we're always very concerned about caregivers who do a lot of advocacy in that area. And as the population continues to age, this great phenomenon of caregiving is certainly increasing. Like, for instance, my mother didn't have to be a caregiver. Her parents died when they were still fairly young. Now, here it is, people are living into their 80s and 90s, even past 100. And so there is more and more need for family caregivers. As a matter of fact, the insurance actuarials actually go up to the age of 120. Imagine that. So a lot of
Wow.
young people these
Wow.
days, children these days, are expected to live even up to the age of 120. That's significant.
Yep. Beautiful.
Yeah. So, Mr. Coker, tell us, what is the timeline for the Census 2020 here in the Virgin Islands? We know that it got off to a bit of a challenge start because of the pandemic. So here we are now in the throes of the Census 2020. And what does the time look? How long will this continue on, and when will it be wrapping up?
Well, we had a first date set to bring this to a close in June, the end of June. But because of the pandemic and we had to be shut down for a couple of months, we have now extended that time since September 30th. Now, I want to encourage our people out there to cooperate with those who come by to fill the census forms. We have to keep our eyes peeled on the eastern skies, so to speak, because we know the month of September is really our high peak for hurricanes. And we will be most grateful to the public if they can really be cooperative and so that we can try and finish this census count within a reasonable time before things begin to get worse again. We had to close for the pandemic, and we would like to see if we can do this and complete this probably before the end of September. So I'm appealing to those out there who haven't yet been counted to cooperate when the enumerators come to their home.
Great. And how long does it take to complete the questionnaire when the enumerator is interviewing you? Approximately how long does it take to complete it? Mr. Coker.
Well, we would like to say between 30 and 60 minutes. It really depends on the number of persons who live in the home, because we find that there are some homes with 7 and 8 and 9 persons living, and so it would take some additional time to get the information on each person who lives in that particular housing unit. So it really depends on the number of persons who live in that home. We also would have to use what we call a continuation form for people, a household with more than 5 persons, because the main questionnaire only holds 5 persons. So when we have to go beyond that, it takes some additional time to get the information on the additional persons living in that housing unit. So we say about 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the population of each home.
Thank you. And And Dr. Encarnacion, what happens if somebody says that they're not going to complete the census? So they're approached by an enumerator and they say, nope, I'm not going to answer any of your questions. What happens then?
My apologies, Croix. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, surely. So if an enumerator approaches somebody or comes to a household to take gather the information, to take the census information, and that person refuses to provide information, refuses to participate in the interview, what happens? Is there any kind of penalty, or how does the enumerator react? How is that recorded?
Yeah. So as Mr. Coker mentioned earlier, we really would like for the respondents to cooperate, not necessarily because it's required by law, but because they understand the value of the data that we are collecting. Responding to the census, it is required by law under Title 13 of the U.S. Code, Section 141 and 193. Give us the authority to request that information from the respondent. But what we want to emphasize is that the data that we collect is protected. That the federal law protects your privacy and keep your answers confidential. That same law that give us the authority to collect the data also make sure that we keep your information confidential on the penalty of prison terms or a fine. The Census Bureau is not permitted to publicly release your responses in any way that could identify you or your household. By law, the Census Bureau can only use your responses for statistical purposes. We only use your data to produce statistics. So we would like for the respondents not to be afraid of participating. The value of the data that we are collecting will impact the decision-making process here in the Virgin Islands for the next 10 years. If you do not participate, you will not be able, AARP won't be able to talk, won't have the data that you guys will need to inform about the needs of your constituents. You mentioned earlier about grandparents as caregivers. But there are questions also on disability. There are questions on mobility. There are questions on health insurance. There are questions about income. Those are questions that you guys are interested in knowing the answer so that you will be able to work on behalf of your constituents. The government need the data as well so that they can build roads or build accessible facilities for seniors. The private businesses use the data to ensure that the resources that your constituents need are available. So we want people to participate because they understand the value of the data that we are collecting, not so much because it's required by law, although it is required by law.
Great, thank you. And once the census is completed, approximately how long will it take for all of the data to be compiled and then released to the public? Do you have any information on that yet?
Yes.
Dr.
So
Encarnacion?
once we finish collecting the data, we have to provide a report to the president, and that report will include the total pop count of the population of the United States. For the Virgin Islands, we hope to have the pop count by the end, but sometimes in 2021. The actual date, we do have a date right now that is on the schedule, but there are, because of the pandemics and a lot of the requests that have been made, I will not give you an actual date right now for us here in the Virgin Islands, but in 2021, we should have the pop count, and in 2022, we will have demographic characteristics data available to you guys.
Excellent, thank you. And Mr. Coker, this year, the census has moved beyond a paper-based collection, inviting people to participate online, using the mobile devices, computers, what have you. or even by phone call or by mail, are all of these initiatives or all of these modes of responding available to everybody living in the Virgin Islands?
I didn't quite get the question, but I believe you were asking about online filing your census papers online or using the phone lines to call in and give that information. Well,
Yes.
this year we've added something new, and it's because of the pandemic situation. We have set up in census office here what we call a contact center. Our enumerators on the ground, they would come to homes and they would leave a notice of visit with certain types of information that if one wants to call into the contact center to do their enumeration, they will call our main census office, and they would listen to the prompt, and then they will hit the right key and they will end up in that call center. And there are several persons there to take the information and fill the census form by phone. We don't have an online setup like it is in the States. We are not equipped to do that here. And perhaps maybe for next census, they may have whatever is needed to do that. But the only thing we can do here in the Virgin Islands is have the enumerators come to the home, do questionnaire at your home, and if some persons feel uncomfortable with folks coming to their home, then they will be given a notice of visit with the necessary information that they must call in, and they can have a census form filled right here in the census office. The information that they will give, the information that we will give will help us be able to determine the location of that home. And we have a number of folks out there right now doing what we call listing. And they're listing those homes as they go along. They're leaving these notices. And I must say and thank our residents here on St. Croix. Many of them have been making use of that line and calling in and having their forms filled. We know that many of them are.
Yeah, Mr. Coker, we're running short on time now, but we want to thank both of you for
them.
being
I'd
here.
like to add here, though.
Yeah, I was saying we're
I'd
running
like
short
to
on
add.
time now. I wanted to thank all of you for being here with us today. And can you just give us just very briefly the web address where people can go to find more information? Just the web address, please.
Sure. Yeah, it is. If you go to census.gov, or if you call us here at 340-718-2020, we'll be more than happy to assist you or answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Troy, for inviting us. Thank you. Take care.